meeting to order at this time. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We'll be looking for a motion and support to approve the agenda. Moved by Tony, supported by Kennedy. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor say aye. Passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. That brings us down to public comment. Michelle, do we have any public comment today?
No public comment today.
Okay, thank you very much. Brings us down to committee items. Item A is approval of the August minutes from our last committee meeting. We'll be looking for a motion. Got it from Tony Baer, looking for a second. Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. And any discussion, corrections, or deletions on the minutes? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor say aye or show sign. All right, passes unanimously. Brings us down to the monthly report from Lifeways. Okay, I do see Mary Beth on.
I'm on now. Sorry, it took me a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mary Beth. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I don't know what the issue was there for a minute, but I am on, so that's good. So I'm going to kind of cover this month's Lifeways report. First thing in the report is a discussion about the Stepping Up initiative. So just some background as a reminder, the Stepping Up initiative was some technical assistance that we were fortunate to receive as a community in Jackson around initiatives to support mental health services in the jails. And when we started this a couple of years ago now, we've done a lot of work with our local jails to do screenings, putting in screenings into place, putting mental health supports into place. And one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, and they anticipate sometime this fall, we'll be able to hold a stakeholder meeting where we'll be able to share some of the significant outcomes relative to having that mental health clinician in both of the jails. So we have, just as a reminder, we have a full-time clinician in both jails in Jackson. And they've been able to, one of the things that they talked about that we're kind of an outlier, they're providing this with several other counties throughout the state. And one of the things that they're seeing is a significant decrease in those that are put on suicide watch in Jackson as a result of being able to connect them quickly with the mental health clinician. So, this is great. They're going to be pulling together a report that they'll be sharing with other communities across the state, and then we'll be able to do that here locally. So look forward to sometime this fall getting an invite to be able to hear the outcomes of that data. We have been able to, with the millage dollars since January of this year, we've served over 225 individuals, and we've provided over 560 mental health supports in both the jails in Jackson. So I will let you know about that. The other thing that's included in your report is around the impact on COVID on crisis services. I think it's always important as county commissioners to be aware of, what is happening around those needing mental health services in our community. And as would be expected and other communities have also seen, is that it started to dip. So we saw a decrease in individuals for an extended period of time of people not reaching out and accessing mental health services. But those numbers are now starting to get back to the levels prior to COVID. And part of the challenges as a community mental health is that the individuals that are showing up now at the hospital, their acuity is so great that diversion services typically are not an option for us at this point in time. So we are doing a lot as an organization to do outreach and try to engage people prior. But those are the numbers, and you'll see that on the second page of your report. As far as the building remodel, phase 1 was completed. staff are in the new space and it's working out great. Demolition for phase 2 has begun. The other thing that's important to know about is around the fact that Michigan, during this pandemic back in April, they passed the Michigan Public Act 12, which created a statewide crisis line. So you might have heard that on a national level, there is the new national 988 number. The state also passed the implementation from a public health perspective of having one access line across the state that people can call. There's right now, they've put out an RFP, and so people are applying to be that vendor statewide. Lots of discussion and planning needs to occur across the state because every single local community mental health does have and has had for years a 24/7 crisis line, a hotline that, you know, we've had the same number. I mean, I've been at Lifeways for going on 28 years and it's been the same number for 28 years. So there's a lot of discussion about how will that coordination occur? How will the warm handoff from people calling the state number to the local community mental health so we can ensure timely access to care occurs? A lot of that is still in the development stage, but the one thing that is a benefit to our community that we'll want to keep an eye on is that this should allow the community mental health to divert some of its expenditure in this area to other services. But we'll know more, I would say, over the next probably 4 to 6 months as the state develops the processes and selects.
Mary Beth, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, you sure can, Daniel.
So with that project, I'm just curious if the intent is to replace those local 24-hour lines with just one general. No. There's a lot of discussion about that. And at this point in time, what's been shared about the state is they're not intending. They still want community mental health to have a number. My worry is that it's going to create a lot of confusion as a community person. Who do I call? Do I call the national number? Do I call the state number? Or do I call the local community mental health? So there has to be a lot of planning and discussion. And, you know, I have volunteered to the state to be a part of that work group because the last thing I want is for this new number to create additional barriers or confusion for people. But I'll keep you appraised. It seems like with the way technology is nowadays, especially in that world, it seems like they would be able to figure out some type of way to still allow those local phone numbers to exist, but maybe be routed into that statewide number, or vice versa. Those calls that come into the state to be routed to the local community that they should belong in. But that was just a question. I'm sorry. You can continue. I was just curious about that.
No, it's a question, you know, that I often, you know, I'm excited about it because I think it will be a great resource for the community and for people across the state. I just want to make sure that the way that it's design does not create any barriers or people get dropped because they called this number and never got, So I'll keep you appraised though. I mean, they're just right now selecting a vendor, haven't heard who that is, but there's more to come, if you will. And then the other update is around the fact that Michigan was selected. So I've been talking a lot about the certified community behavioral health clinics and the fact that there were 8 states selected initially at the federal level for being, and Michigan had applied, but we were not selected. They just announced since the last time I presented to you that Michigan has been selected. They selected 2 states to expand, and Michigan and Kentucky were the 2 states. So Again, stay tuned. We'll learn more as the state moves forward with that, but that is going to be critical when we talk about really moving mental health services forward in an integrated model with primary care. Things that we've already been doing here at Lifeways in partnership with our local FQHC. So stay tuned. And with that, I don't know if there were any questions of any of the county commissioners.
Committee, are there any questions for Mary Beth? All right, seeing or hearing none, thank you very much, Mary Beth, and also thank you for the information on the KPIs from Lifeways. I really, really appreciate that information.
Yep, anything I can do to be a help.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
All right, committee, next item on the agenda, item C, DHHS quarterly report. Do we have anyone from DHHS? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. So that report is available for you to read. We can move to the next item, item D, medical care facility report. Is there someone from the medical care facility?
Yes. Hello, this is Destiny.
Good afternoon, Destiny. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Okay. So for our report this quarter, because we met with you more recently, we just have July's financials to report on. So financials for July showed a net loss of $213,000. This is less than budget by $167,000, as the facility had budgeted for a net loss of $46,000 for the month of July. Revenue was under budget by $114,000. This is a result of less than budgeted census for the month of July. Expenses were also over budget by $53,000. And this can be attributed to a $2 an hour increase in wages for all care partners in response to the passing of Senate Bill 690. Senate Bill 690 provided for reimbursement from the state of Michigan for all RNs, LPNs, CNAs, and respiratory therapists working in direct care for that increase. The board and I came to the decision that because we have to work as a team to keep our residents safe, that $2 an hour increase was going to be offered to every care partner, not just those covered under the law. For those that are not covered under the law, we're covering the cost of that increase with the grant money that was provided to us previously this year. Census averaged 176, which was lower than budget by 8 beds for the month of July. A big portion of this is due to the requirement for us to keep every resident coming into the facility in quarantine for 14 days upon admission in a private room. So we have 16 private rooms that were part of our renovation, and that is the area we're using as our receiving center. But 14 days to keep that churn of new admissions is challenging to do. We're also seeing less referrals from the hospital for what we've typically seen as nursing home residents. And so we've been making some changes with how we handle some of those new referrals as well. If you note in my report that was submitted to you guys, you can see since COVID started in mid-March, I've placed a red box in that area for the census. You can see that we've struggled with census during the entirety of the COVID pandemic. We are starting to see a little bit of bounce back the last couple days as we've made some new changes in the building to try and accommodate more residents being in that 14-day isolation. So hopefully we'll see some turnaround in that shortly. Also, just a little bit about people for our unions. Right now, we have no outstanding grievances with the Michigan Nurses Association or AFSCME 2098A. We do have one case scheduled to go to arbitration for AFSCME 139 regarding a termination. A short-term contract was approved with AFSCME 2098A on July 27th. The only change to that contract was simply the dates of the contract. That made the contract end effective December 31st of 2020. So that way we didn't have to negotiate in the midst of all of this stuff going on. So it was a very helpful suggestion from both us and the union to be able to do that. For 2020, so far, our turnover rate is at 19.81%. We are continuing to bring in new care partners to fill positions, as we have had quite a few departures in the month of July. You can see there we had 14 people that left us during the month of July. We also have seen a slight uptick in our number of mandations that we're seeing per month, and that can be noted in the two tables down below. Part of that is due to the departures that we've seen in July. A lot of that had to do with the changes with having to work in a face shield, having to be tested weekly, and that's put a lot of extra stress and pressure on our care partners that have been working so hard to keep our residents safe. For quality, we are currently ranked as a 4-star facility. We have 5 stars in quality and 5 stars in the staffing components of the CMS 5-star system, but we currently have 2 stars in our survey rating. At this time, we can't improve that survey rating until we have our next annual survey, and that has been on hold due to the pandemic. Those surveys have just recently started back up, so that might be something we're seeing shortly. We continue to work on our quality projects, even despite all that's going on. As far as growth, as I mentioned before, we continue to try and attract qualified LPNs, RNs, CNAs, and social workers, as well as members to our human resource department. In addition, I was just appointed to the NACO Health Steering Committee as a member of the NACO Health Steering Committee. So that is another set of resources that we'll now have the opportunity to tap into. I did want to share with you right now our statistics when it comes to our COVID testing. So currently, since the beginning of the pandemic, we have had 0 residents that have tested positive. We have had 703 negative test results and 21 pending test results. For our care partners, we have had 3 care partners that have tested positive with 3,624 negative test results and no pending test results at this time. For the 3 care partners that tested positive, those individuals tested positive on May 10th, June 13th, and August 12th. And I think that concludes my update. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Yeah, I have a
That we had today.
Oh. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Commissioner Williams.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure I got a good understanding on this. So round figure, we're looking at a net loss, if I heard you right, round figure $200,000.
Right now, for the month, yes, it won 167,000. Now, about 80,000 of that will be reimbursed back from the state for that wage increase for the LPNs, RNs, CNAs, and respiratory therapists.
So that brings me to my next question. Now, with that raise, was the raise in total $80,000, or did that push us further into the raise?
No. So the increase goes through September 30th, and the $80,000 amount is the amount just for the RNs, LPNs, CNAs, and respiratory therapists from July through about halfway through August, and that will be reimbursed to us. There is an additional amount covering other folks, but that is all being covered by the previous grant money that we received, because we have to spend that grant money on COVID-related expenses. And so we're able to put that towards that wage increase for that temporary period of time. So it did not dig us any further into the hole than we had already been.
Okay, so just so I have the best understanding in this, and if you're repeating yourself, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
So with all of the raises that were given, if I heard correctly, everybody on staff was given that $2 raise, correct?
That is correct.
So with the addition of all staff, will there be additional dollars to cover that, or are we using budget dollars to cover the raises for everyone outside of this $80,000?
We are using grant money as opposed to budget money.
I'm sorry.
We are using grant money as opposed to budget money.
Okay, so to clarify, last time I'll ask just to make sure I got this right. All of the raises that we gave for those that came by the way of the bill, and then those that came with all staff.
Mm-hmm.
All those raises are covered financially. That's not using any budgeted dollars that would eventually push us further into the red.
Correct.
Okay. All right, those are the only questions I had. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
No, great question. I understand.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pileski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the financial statements. It's not during the current month, but in prior months, the medical care facility has received about $705,000. I see at the bottom of the financial statement, about $705,000 in county funds transfers. And I'm a little embarrassed if I have never asked this question before, but what is the nature of that? Do you know?
Yes. So that transfer was a transfer from the county to the facility because during the construction of the renovation project, MOE had not yet collected tax money enough to cover the expenses. So that transfer was to cover the expenses that the facility had covered while MOE was in a deficit.
So, okay, let me think about that for a second. I guess the main question is whether that is and perhaps this is a question for the administration more than you guys, but is whether is that a one-time thing? Is it related to your millage? I can't imagine it's general fund monies. Is it, Mike? Not general fund? No.
It was a one-time thing.
And it's maintenance of effort monies.
Okay, all right.
They had if I recall, you guys had built, and you had built faster or paid bills sooner than the money could keep up that was coming in, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Mr. Chair, if I'm in order, I do have a couple other questions.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So I think I can wrap these other questions I have up into one question. So as we've been talking and meeting, and in addition to Commissioner Pileski's comments relating to budget of previous months, we have some months that are better than others, and we have some months that just don't look very good at all. And so, but the one common thread we're seeing is just this growing number of continuing to go into the red. And so I'm wondering if we have any plans to help us to turn things around. I understand we have the pandemic and the problems that are associated with that. However, I'd hate for us to come back this time next year and we're still in the red or even further into the red. So I'm wondering if the board there has made any provisions to help turn the ship around, or are we, I don't know, are we doing anything as it relates to advertisement to bring in additional people that would then, give us more finances to gain there? I'm just wondering if there's a plan being set, or if there's a plan or if we can create a plan to help get ourselves in a better financial position.
Okay, so that's a really great question. And I think that one of the things that it's really important to point back to is the last 2 months, we did have a considerable amount of grant money that we received that was designed for COVID-related expenses. So one of the things I just discussed was using part of that towards that wage increase, but the other part of that is being used towards lost revenue. So for anything that doesn't match our budgeted census, we can utilize that money and allocate it in that budget area as if it was revenue, according to the uses allowed by the grant. And so that is right now primarily what we're using. Now, July did not look for the month of July as well as the last couple months because there was no grant money allocated in July. Now, there are some additional grants that are going to be coming out based on the how well each facility individually is doing with managing COVID. So the better that you have managed it, the more money you'll receive in grant money. There's also some additional grants that are being offered for increases in infection control training or tools. And those are some of the things that I'm looking at trying to utilize to help keep things in line so that we don't end up any further in the hole than we were already headed at the beginning of the year.
So I understand that and I appreciate that. But when looking at the government, particularly in the case of grants, we can't necessarily take that to the bank. And so I would hate for us to put all our eggs in the basket in anticipation of grant dollars to add to our financial problems here. And then we not get those. And then if in the event we don't get those, then what do we do from there, I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
So these grants are a little bit different than the majority of grants that people have, because these particular grants under the CARES Act are being funneled out to us. There's no application process. There's the fact that we are a healthcare facility providing care during COVID, you're qualified. So it's just a matter of when those funds get sent out, not if we're eligible for them with those particular grants.
Correct. So I understand how the CARES Act works, but I guess I'm speaking, or I should be speaking, outside of the CARES Act. And when we're looking at things that are not related to pandemic relief, we'll still have a bit of a deficit there. So my question is more around that. How have we put plans together? Are we putting plans together to fix that issue there outside of any CARES Act dollars that we can get?
So we have been looking at our processes for admissions, looking at some of the changes that we've seen in the types of resident referrals that we're getting to look at providing those cares differently and providing extra training for our staff to be able to take a different type of resident. So that will help on the referral side of things. We are also really looking at, because we had so many departures specifically in July, we've seen a lot more overtime. So we're really looking at trying to make sure that we keep those positions filled so that we're not creating more overtime. So we're looking at things like that. As far as extra expenses that are not, that are outside of what was budgeted, with the exception of the wage increase, there has been a few things like food costs have gone up, but that's something that we are pretty limited in. We are looking at making sure we're utilizing our group purchasing organizations as much as possible to get the best possible discount. But one thing that I think is really important too is with Medicaid for nursing homes, the way they determine what we get paid per resident per day is determined on our costs. So even though our costs have been higher in the last several years, that is going to reflect in the Medicaid rate that we get reimbursed over the next couple years. So they take all of the costs that we pay, especially those attributed to wages. And that's something that I think I mentioned in the past. Wages is a reimbursable cost. So when we are overspending on wages, we actually receive more money back in our Medicaid rate in future years to help keep us at an even budget. So I think that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind too when we're seeing this, that we're going to start to see that money coming back as the cost is changed with our Medicaid rate. I don't think that fully answered your question, but did that help answer your question?
Well, it pointed me in the right direction. I think we can talk maybe a little further offline on the matter, and I certainly appreciate the work that you've done thus far. And I hope you don't feel as if I'm, pushing your back against the wall. I know you got a lot of responsibilities there, and with on top of the pandemic. But I just want to be, clear, and I just want to make sure that I have the best understanding and that everyone else that this is quite a problem we have financially with the facility there, and I just want to be able to put ourselves in a position so that it's not a continuing growing problem. And I'm not saying that problem is solely based on you or anything that you've done, but I do want us to be able to begin to turn the ship around and be able just to do better with the facility there. Now I understand with business, you're going to have your ebb and your flow. Some quarters are going to be better than others. I understand that. But when we have a progressively problem that's continuing to get worse, that's just alarming to me. And so I just want us to make sure that we're doing what we can to better the situation, and so that we're not putting ourselves into a pretty dangerous position. But thank you nonetheless.
No problem. Anything else I can answer for you?
Nothing further.
I just had a couple of additional questions myself also. Just look at budget, Destiny. The main question I had was around the private revenue under the income. Just noticing that's at like 40%, and that's 40% to our overall goal, correct?
One
The
moment.
year.
Let me just open that document up.
Okay.
With private income, correct?
Yep.
So, so we have seen a decrease in private income. We're seeing a lot more people coming on Medicaid or Medicare right now, specifically right now, because a lot of the folks that are able to pay at a private level are choosing to stay home, especially with the visiting restrictions that are in place. So yes, we have seen a fair dip in that private revenue right now.
Okay, is that something that you expect to recover before end of year, or do you think that's probably going to stay on par to the direction that it's going right now?
I think that it will be very much dependent on what the state decides to do with ongoing visitation. If visitation continues to be restricted, just at this time, just so you guys are aware, you may be already aware, but the only time that there is any in-person visits allowed is if the person is at end of life or in hospice care, if they're having a severe decline in their mental or physical well-being, or if they require assistance from their family for activities of daily living, like assistance with being fed or assistance being transferred or taken to the bathroom, which really doesn't apply to any of our residents because we do that for them. And even with those in-person visits, there's still no physical contact allowed, which is extremely hard for the residents and extremely hard for the families. And we have to limit the amount of time that they're able to visit, and we have to actually watch their entire visit to ensure that all of the social distancing guidelines are being followed, that masking guidelines are being followed. And it is very much like a prison visit, unfortunately, right now. And that has really played a lot of part in people's decision-making process and whether the nursing home is a place that they want to come to. And so I think that will be very what they do with that will be very dependent on what that private pay rate looks like through the rest of the year. If they start to lift those regulations and start to allow more normal visitation, like as we were accustomed to, I think that we'll see that increase back up. But I think that's all going to be very much tied to those guidelines.
And then just two additional questions, and then that will take care of the questions that I had. One additional question is with the estimated $80,000 in wage reimbursement. Once that money is reimbursed, is that just going to go back to your general fund, or where's that money going to go to?
So that will go back to the general fund, because we've transferred the monies from the general fund, our general fund, into our payroll account to cover that, and then it will be reimbursed to the general account.
Okay, and then last question was, it seemed like you were referring to an additional document that maybe didn't make it to board docs. I was just wanted to make you aware the only document that we had to follow along was your financial statement. So if there was a quarterly report that you were referring to for the additional information, I would ask that you send that out to Mike to be sent to commissioners as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so sorry about that. I thought that was sent to you guys. I will get that sent over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that answers all my questions. Commissioners, are there any additional questions? Okay, seeing or hearing none, thank you very much, Dustin. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Next item on the agenda is item E, Department on Aging Monthly Report.
Sorry about that. Hello.
Good afternoon.
I was just going to review the report that was submitted and help to answer any questions that anybody has. I keep updating about these produce boxes as the clients that we serve do enjoy receiving them. It also helps, again, to help with nutrition in the home for people that are not getting fresh fruits and vegetables because they're not able to get to the store. The program stopped in August, and we were supposed to look at, the state's looking at having another provider take over that program again sometime this fall. We thought it was going to restart on September 14th, but then we received communication today that the state has not awarded that contract back out. We are receiving some information that it should be Van Eerden, who is our current nutrition provider, but we're still waiting for more communication from the state. Something that we requested with the produce boxes is that currently when we receive them, we're supposed to hand deliver them to the seniors. So sometimes they might go out on a meal route, they might go out with a social worker, or other staff at the department will take them out to seniors. People are not supposed to be picking them up, and we're trying to see if people are not homebound and are getting out in the community and don't have that fear of COVID, if they're able to come to the site and pick those up. So we're trying to get some information on that just to save staff time and resources. If people are not homebound, that they would have the possibility of picking those boxes up on site. I noted a couple senior initiatives that we heard that were coming through the state. One was the Get Set Up and also the COVID-19 checkup. I thought that I might receive some communication before this meeting and be able to share more about them, but I have not. So as far as I know, nothing's been made public about more about these new initiatives. So I'll probably address that again next month. With the Get Up Set Up, we're looking at as a way to enhance the programs that we currently offer in the community. We know with the senior centers, with them having to be shut down, it limited the enrichment activities that we were able to offer at the sites. So we weren't able to do like our community education or do bingo and things like that, but we've been working to incorporate Zoom activities. So we're hoping that what we would be able to do with this Get Set Up is to tap into them to help our brick and mortar structures to enhance our programming. So we're hoping that again, as we try to reach out to adults that may not normally come to a senior center, that again, they're older adults living in our community due to their lifestyles and things that they're doing that might not come to a senior center, but maybe we can tap into this new Get Up set up as a way to target and reach out to them, let them know that we're here, and also then offer some of these educational sessions. So we're hoping to learn more about that, and again, to enhance really overall everything that we do. With the COVID-19 checkup, I just provided some information about that. It's again, specifically to older adults. One component that we were really interested in with that is that it's supposed to help identify resources to assist, like with unmet needs, if people have nutritional needs or they're needing some kind of home care assistance, just any kind of questions, how they're directed to our local resources. So we're curious to see how we're part of that, if it goes to the regional offices or whether it gets directed right down to the local level. So again, we're looking to get more information on that as that rolls out through the state. With the home delivered meals, we are on target with the nutrition manager to resume our cold meals. Again, we've been phasing back in. Again, we were doing frozen just at one time. Then we started working with the hot program, went to full capacity with offering that the 5 days a week. And then the last reintroduction that we need to do for the services is to offer our cold meal option. And then again, that's going to begin on the 14th. So we're excited to kind of get back to where we were pre-pandemic, to make sure all those services are available for the seniors in our community. With the MAP program, usually like in the past, that's a time of year where we're seeing probably right around 250 people where they're coming on site, and we are helping them with their Medicare prescription plans and helping to inform them of their options. Due to the COVID-19 and with the MAP program, we cannot do anything in person. So everything will be done over the phone. The coordinator of that program has been working with the volunteers, and they will come on site on particular days so that they can make telephone calls to clients who are interested in learning about their Medicare prescription options for choosing their Plan D. And then that information will be mailed out to the individual. So the volunteers, again, will come on site. So they do have some supervision with the MAP coordinator for our area. And again, then we can continue to help people during this enrollment period, which is it's a very high call volume for us. So again, we're excited that we can still provide that opportunity during the pandemic. I was just going to share one comment that we got from somebody that used the MAP program. It was a survey that came back in, and the person had said that all help that they received was greatly appreciated. Your patience with all the questions was helpful and easing my apprehension. So again, when you think of the Medicare program, it really is, it's that unbiased person providing information about Medicare, supplemental insurances. They're not there to try to sell somebody something, but again, help that person to make informed decisions. Any questions at all?
Committee, what questions do we have today? Okay, I don't think I see any, Danielle. I think we are good to go.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. You have a great day.
You too.
All right, committee, that brings us down to our next item F, which is MSU Extension Semi-Annual Report. Matt, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I submitted a presentation online. I'm happy to share my screen if you would prefer, or you can go through it on your own. Which would be your preference?
I think it would be helpful if you shared your screen personally.
Okay.
I don't know.
I will do that. Okay, can you see that okay?
We had it, then lost it.
Oh, All right, hold on a second here.
Okay, now we got it.
All right, are you seeing the actual presentation or are you just seeing my slide deck?
Seeing the deck right now.
Okay, let me try to go to slide view and see if we lose it again, we'll just do it this way. Can you still see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. Wanted to give you an overview of the work that we've been doing in Extension for the last few months. Our Extension educators have been very active during the pandemic time, still working a lot remotely. We've done 23 programs in Jackson with 337 attendees. But the most notable thing that I wanted you to all be aware of is that during that same time, because of all of the remote opportunities that are available, that there have actually been Jackson residents that have attended 145 programs around the state. So our reach is growing because folks are having access to other programs that they might not have available to locally. So a couple of the programs I just wanted to highlight, there's of the 145, College 101, Financial Aid, Adulting 101, Budget and Credit, Informed Renters, Cooking 101, and Household Tasks. That's sort of a pre-college or college age student coursework that we're doing. There's also home buyer education, food preservation, managing money challenges during COVID-19, Cooking for One, Bumblebees in the Great Lakes, just to name a few. Also, Tom Guthrie here in Jackson has been working with My Horse University on a lunch chat series. So it's a webinar series in response to the pandemic to help producers stay connected. They've done several webinars advertised through various social media and email lists that we have, using both Zoom and Facebook Live platforms to extend the reach to new audiences around the state and actually country. We've had participants from multiple states on those programs as well. Here's just a list of some of the webinars that have happened through July, and you can see the number of views there. So quite a reach around the state for that. And Tom's been a big part of making that happen. Also this year, we'll talk a little bit more about this under the 4-H section of my report, but the virtual showcase that we had in the fact that FAIR was canceled, and so 4-H wasn't able to participate in FAIR as usual. So we did some virtual showcase. Tom Guthrie in our office was a part of the committee planning the virtual showcase and working with the animal agriculture group to make sure that the resources that youth needed to participate fully were all prepared. So you can see here a list of the publications that were developed as a part of the youth showcase, some of the tip sheets, virtual horse show considerations, as well as some learning reflection documents. And then our Clover Buds at the bottom there, those are our young 4-H members, our 5 to 8-year-olds that participate. There's some documents that we developed for them as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about the virtual showcase numbers in Jackson in just a few minutes. Wanted to provide an update for you. We've talked about this being prepared for accident rollovers involving livestock. Had a goal of getting a trailer secured for Jackson County. Still have some money yet to raise to get that actual trailer going. Been working on this for the last few months. Did receive in June support from Jackson County Farm Bureau of $500. There was coincidentally in July, a cattle transporter overturned in northern Michigan on I-75. So it speaks to the importance of having this equipment available because there are a lot of livestock that get transported through Jackson County. And then in August, we received official approval to utilize some Michigan Alliance for Animal Agriculture grant dollars to purchase the equipment needed for the trailer. So we continue to work with Jason and Chief McDownley on the trailer to get that located in Jackson County. So that work continues. Moving on now to some of our small ruminant programs that Mike Metzger, who's housed in the Jackson office, works on. Just so you understand that we don't talk a lot about the sheep and goat industry in the state, but if you look at in Michigan, the sheep and goat industry is almost an $11 million industry. Goats are about $2 million. We do have good forage availability in Jackson County. We have access to a local market. The United Producers Market in Manchester is, I think, one of the largest sheep and goat auction markets east of the Mississippi River, with about $200,000 or 200,000 animals passing through there annually. And we also have Wolverine Packing in Detroit, which processes a lot of those animals. So it makes it a very good business opportunity for producers in this part of the state. Since March timeframe, I've been holding some virtual marketing programs to try to help with some of the changes in market that we've seen during the pandemic. And then also looking at some virtual parasite management issues, because those production issues don't go away just because we can't get together face to face. So still continuing to engage producers in that way. During the pandemic, there was a 3-week period of time that you probably have heard on the news and other places nationwide, but actually impacted Wolverine Packing in Detroit. They were shut down for 3 weeks, which caused a huge disruption in the processing industry and a drop in prices. So there was a small ruminant producer meeting held in May to help address some of the marketing issues facing that industry. And we did have producers from Jackson County attend that program as well. And then also, as I mentioned, some parasite management webinars that took place to help producers through those management issues during the summer months also. Moving on to the Jackson County Master Gardener Program. We are planning the next Master Gardener Program to be held in spring. We've held this in Jackson since 1978. Look forward to that program continuing. Depending on the circumstances and what we're allowed to do by springtime, we have been able to move some of this content to a virtual format as well. So we are prepared to be able to deliver Master Gardener programming in the event that there is still a need to limit face-to-face programming, but we're certainly hopeful that by spring, when we can run this program, that we'll be able to do it at least in some part with the face-to-face hands-on components that we're used to doing with that program. But we're excited that we'll be able to offer that to Jackson residents again. And that should be spring 2021. I apologize for the typo on there. I just noticed that, but spring will be next year. So that's coming. Moving on to 4-H programs, continuing to offer virtual experiences for youth as much as we're able to do. So we've had a lot of countywide workshop offerings around some of these hands-on life skills that you can see listed on the slide here. Also doing, it's the second year of the South Central Michigan Virtual School Program around life skills education. And then a partnership with Imagine Planet to provide STEM education, which just as a reminder is science, technology, engineering, and math education in a spin club format. And spin clubs are short-term special interest programs that we recruit volunteers and others to run those programs, usually for about a 4 to 6 week period of time. That's our spin club format. Also mentioned the virtual showcase. So we did have about 50 participants, which certainly is down from the number of participants that we would have at the actual fair, but we had 200 entries. So we were really excited to see that. We were seeing across the state, we had about 65 virtual showcase events held in the state. And we were seeing typically somewhere around a third or so of the typical number of participants or entries at those events statewide. And so Jackson County is kind of right in that format in terms of number of entries that we received. We also did do a statewide virtual showcase, sort of a state fair in partnership with the Michigan State Fair that just wrapped up this past week. And we had over 2,000 entries from 65 counties in Michigan participate in that showcase. So we're excited to see that as well. This format allows 4-H and FFA members to participate in projects from their own homes. We had interviews with members and parents that ran during Fair Week on WKHM, and leaders work closely with members and processors to secure processing for all the animals. We did not do an auction in Jackson County as we typically would. Some counties did a virtual auction, others chose to do just private treaty sales of those animals, but help those youth obtain processing appointments. If you're not aware, in the processing industry right now, nationally, but especially in Michigan, there's a backlog of processing dates for about a year for individuals to be able to get animals processed. So we worked with our typical fair processors to secure dates for those kids to get the animals in and process for the buyers. And then, members and leaders continued to show resiliency by working through the pandemic and doing things in a virtual way this year. Wasn't what we had hoped to happen for any of the fairs to not go on, as many did not, but we're lucky that we were able to put together something that allowed kids to at least showcase their projects in some format. So just a few highlights. Here's some pictures that were submitted through our Fair Entry platform for youth in 4-H online to be able to exhibit their animals this year. So these would be some of their actual show photos. It provided a new platform. We can actually use this platform in other ways throughout the year too. If we want to provide other ways for youth to exhibit different kinds of things, we can do that throughout the year. And then here in Jackson, there were some scholarships awarded for showmanship winners in each division. Showmanship typically had video presentations that were presented as well as pictures for judges to look at. And then we distributed awards and ribbon packages to participants with support of the Jackson County Fair to do that. Also, just goals for the new program year, which started September 1, providing additional support for K-12 schools, statewide resources being developed and then distributed to Jackson County schools. We have some self-paced activities as well as real-time virtual experiences for area youth. We're writing a proposal for kits to be distributed to participants. So make sure we get those products out that they need to be able to do some of the projects that we're working with. And then talking to teachers to determine what their needs may be to support some of the face-to-face and online education that's happening through public schools. And continue to work with fair staff to provide youth development opportunities. I did also want to take a minute to mention here that it is 4-H enrollment time again. We'll be opening up enrollment soon for the 2020-21 programming year. And this year, because of the virtual format that we're working through right now and some of the other things happening in the midst of the pandemic and trying to get as many youth as possible engaged in 4-H life skills learning activities, is that we have waived the $20 participation fee for youth for this programming year to try to make sure that we're reaching as many youth as possible. So be sure as you're talking to your constituent groups and others that you're working with to let them know that 4-H, as always, is available to all, but this year we've waived the participation fee in hopes that we can reach more students and youth in our area with programming that we have available. On to nutrition and physical activity, virtual education that we've been doing. So we've still been doing nutrition education, cooking skill demonstrations online, physical activity demonstrations online, as well as food safety. One example of this is teen cuisine with the Disability Connections, independent living skills, cooking skills, looking at food labels, healthy meals and snacks, creating shopping lists, and helping to keep food safe, and the importance of staying active. So trying to really, as people are less able to get out and about, still the importance of physical activity is there. So try to encourage that through our programming as much as possible. Students reported through this program that they tried some new recipes. They practiced knife skills. The picture of the cut up apple here is actually one that was submitted with someone who was practicing and submitted that picture to Angela to show that they were working on their knife skills and trying to get the slices nice and even. Looked for sugar on food labels and set goals to be more active instead of being on their phones as much, which is great. And I should sign my kids up for some of that too, because we've been dealing with that at home as well. So Cooking for One, this is a newer curriculum for us. I think I've highlighted this once before for you, but it's a brand new curriculum that we developed at MSU Extension, working on this with Department on Aging. Seniors tuned into nutrition education classes to learn how to plan a meal and prepare for one person. which is sometimes not easy to do with portion sizing and things of that nature, with an emphasis on food safety. It also provides some cooking demonstrations and some new recipes for them to try as a part of this curriculum. So we're excited to be able to still deliver a lot of things online, given that we can't meet face-to-face currently. So some cross collaborations we've been doing is while working from home has provided us some opportunities for some new nutrition and physical activity teamwork. We've worked with other individuals in counties around Michigan for some co-instruction and recruitment for online programming, because as I mentioned earlier, we've had participants from counties participate in things that are happening all around the state because of that. So it's allowed us to put new resources into communities that we didn't have previously. And then we're trying to create new resources and training materials all the time, as well as doing professional development for our staff during this time also to help them be more effective in their roles. So with that, I will stop sharing, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for me at this time.
All right, committee, what questions do we have for Matt today? All right, I don't think I see any at all. I think we are all set, Matt. Thank you very much.
All
you
right.
Have a great day.
Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
All right, next item on the agenda brings us down to Finance 2020 Health Department Budget Amendment.
Commissioner Mahoney, this is Rashmi, and I thought Jonathan McGowan was going to report on that because I think Cecilia's not in town. Are you on the call, Jonathan?
He's on there, isn't he?
Yep, I see him on.
Yeah, I
there he
just
is.
unmuted myself. Sorry, I wasn't sure if someone else was going to unmute me or I was going to unmute myself. So you should have a copy of the budget amendments. And so I'm just kind of walk you through it and then explain kind of what the rationale is for the various ones. So I'm going to kind of skip the revenues for now because some of those are related to the expenses, and then we'll kind of go back to the revenue side. But starting on the expense side, we have the Healthy Communities Grant, and that is some wages and benefits. I was just looking at that. We had some carryover from the prior year. And so basically, I think that was like the final payroll that was actually from the last fiscal year that was paid out, the first payroll in October. So that's what that is for. We didn't really have anything budgeted, but because of just the way that our payroll runs, sometimes we have a little bit of a carryover, and that's what that is. But we, what we did, I think, is had the revenue offsetting that as well. So that's the reason for that. That was all from the first of the year. The Health and Nutrition Grant is the Henry Ford Allegiance Health. That's a Henry Ford Allegiance Health grant. The reason that was not in the original budget is because we were applying for renewal at the time of the budget, that the budget was put together. So we didn't know if we were going to be approved or not. We were approved. If you look on the revenue side, there's also $64.50 in revenue that's being also, we wanted to amend the budget for that to cover these expenses. So that's a pretty much self-sufficient grant there, paid by Henry Ford. The next item is the COVID-19 response. There's actually basically 3 grants that are covering the cost. So in this case, just so everybody's kind of up to speed on this, this wasn't like adding additional staffing. What we were doing primarily with this is taking health department staff and reallocating some of their hours to COVID-19 response. And then we're reimbursed on through these 3 grants. 2 of them are state grants. And then we also have we're approved for CARES Act funding, which is also administered by the state of Michigan. In our case, the Jackson County was not a large enough municipality to be directly funded through the federal government on this. So it's actually paid out through the state of Michigan. That was finally approved like late June, early July timeframe. And I think some of you may have seen some the application for funding or what we submitted for that. And but anyway, at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, the expenses that we've charged to these programs through those 3 grants are going to be 100% should be reimbursed through these grants. There shouldn't be any county money going on this. The benefit of this, of course, is by having some of these hours diverted from other programs, then some of the county contributions to some of these other programs that they would normally be charged to is being reduced. So our expectation is, even though I don't have necessarily the budget amendment, the expectation is that this should reduce our county contribution on some of the other grants that the health department has. So that's got a benefit. But so we're and we expect to have some carryover into the next fiscal year as well on that. But we don't really. Again, it's one of those things. It's as it comes up and as we get approved, basically the state informs us of, hey, you're approved for X amount of money, and we don't really know what that is ahead of time, unfortunately. But so it's kind of hard to budget for because we don't really know that. But that's what that is, and you'll see the offsetting revenues, which is a little bit over $650,000 through those 3 grants. The next one is breastfeeding peer counseling, which is a WIC program associated with WIC. And basically what we're doing here is just based on some operating supplies and materials that were purchased during the year. We've just kind of moved some of that money from contractual into that. So it's offsetting, there's 0 impact on overall budget. The next one is soil erosion. This is a program that is associated with environmental health, and the costs kind of vary from year to year. So this is one of those things where we budget for a certain amount. Sometimes the demand for soil erosion services is a little bit higher than what we anticipated, and that's what's going on here. But so we're requesting some additional money based on higher than expected wages there, but it's kind of a offshoot of the environmental health program, and we should be covering that through the fees there. The next one is maternal infant health. We had, this is just something, again, that's based on actual spending. We had $30 in professional services, and so we're reducing supplies and materials by the $30. So there's a 0 overall impact on budget. The next one is the Zika mosquito surveillance, and this is one of those programs where we don't really know, because most of the any expenses or approval of this is usually going to be the following summer from when we're doing budget. So it's based on the need for mosquito surveillance. Obviously, they found a few positives on doing the testing, and so based on that, we were approved for some additional grant funding on that. And you'll see that on the revenue side as well, that we had $9,000 that we were approved for. But again, it's not something we can really budget for because it's only as needed. Obviously, this year was not as bad of a year as last year. Obviously, last summer was really bad for this mosquito-borne illness tracking, and it's not as doesn't seem to be as bad this year, but obviously still necessary to do some testing because of a few positives to keep livestock and humans safe and make sure we're tracking that. So that's what that's for. And that's again through environmental health, part of the environmental health. The next thing is the teen community grants. And that is that was a Jackson Community Foundation grant, was the source of the funding for that. Basically what that was a carryover from the prior year. So if you look on the revenue side, you're going to see that we had $5,150. And basically what that was, the total amount of the grant. Question? Was there a question or?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Pulaski. Mr. Chair, I would move the recommendation of the staff, and then I have a question if I can get support.
Is there support?
Just looking for support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I might, just got a brief question. This is a little higher level question than what we've been going through, but I noticed that in the budget amendment, the use of fund balance overall is reduced by about 27,000. I don't see much in the way of relief to the county general fund. Would that be a correct statement, Jonathan?
Beyond the 27, well, the one thing I would say about that is correct as far as what we're submitting with a budget amendment. But what I would say is that I believe, I think as a conservative estimate, I mean, I do believe that environmental health fees are going to come in higher than budgeted. However, I'm not including that in the budget amendment. So this is a fairly, I think, conservative estimate. And I do believe that the relief for plan use of fund balance is going to come in, the actual is going to come in higher than that. I just didn't.
So for example, if
it in the budget amendment.
So for example, if we look at the COVID-19 response, we've got the $450,000 federal grant, the $205,000 state grant. But I guess if I see the expense amendment, I'm seeing actual incrementally increased expenses. It's not simply
Right.
kind of allocating existing expenses to those grants, aren't we? I mean, that tells me we're actually spending more
Right.
actual dollars
Well,
on COVID-19 response than what we, I mean, and that's okay. I just want to make sure I know that that's what we're looking at here.
I that's an excellent question. And what I would say on that is my expectation is that we're gonna see a lower local contribution on some of these programs where people's time was allocated from other programs within the health department to the COVID-19 response. I didn't include that in the budget amendment, but I think when we see the actual results, when we get to year end here shortly, I think you're going to see that savings. So even though I didn't necessarily build that into this, yeah, I do agree. It should be much higher savings than that.
Okay, so you're being fairly conservative with the budget amendment. I get that, and we'll simply be looking to the administration to stay on top of the costs and making sure we garner the revenues that you're suggesting. These additional roughly 750,000 increased revenues. Part of that being the 27,000 of fund balance. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
If I may.
Any other questions? Yes, Mike.
Yeah, Jonathan, I thought I understood until that last part there, and then you lost me. I thought I heard you say that we're using COVID monies and we're using existing employees to provide response for COVID, and that some of those employees, since we're supplanting their wages with COVID money, we are not going to get as much in grant money. Therefore, I was good up to that point, but then you said-
No,
Okay.
I apologize if you misunderstood. What I meant was, there are other grants that normally a lot of these people would be charged to, and the reduction should be not in the grant money that we're receiving from those other grants, but in a lot of those cases, and I'm trying to keep a close eye on that. I mean, is the one thing is making sure that we're spending all of the grant money, but in a lot of those cases, included in that budget is local money, and there should be a reduced amount of local money, and we're hoping that we're spending all of the money necessary to use up all of the grant money, and the savings should be on the county side. So that's why I'm saying,
Okay,
there should be some county savings there.
good. That's a much better answer. I like that one. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I could clarify, and I don't want anybody misunderstanding. It's not that we're losing revenues elsewhere by doing this.
All right, if there's not any other committee questions, the recommendation to move this to the full board has been made and supported. So at this time, we will just be asking for a vote. All in favor, say aye or show the sign. And I think that's everybody. So all opposed, say nay. All right, so we'll move that forward to the full board. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Health Department. Sorry, next item on the agenda is item H, Health Department Environmental Health Fees.
Rashmi, Don, you guys
Yeah.
out there? Okay.
Yeah,
go.
I'm here, Mike. I think Don was going to cover this, so I'll let him take over. Don, you on?
I am. Hopefully everybody can hear and see me. I
Okay.
can see myself.
I think we can't see you, but we can hear you. Okay. Oh, now we
You-
can. Okay, got it.
So I'll just take you through, you have the staff report in front of you. We are proposing to increase fees in the well and septic programs for fiscal year 2021. I want to make it very clear that it is well and septic fees as opposed to any of the program fees that we had raised last year for those fee increases. It's kind of been a 2-year step to get out of the structural fiscal deficit in Environmental Health Division. We've identified, looking at page 2 of your staff report, kind of the bottom of page 2 shows you essentially about how much money we need to raise to balance the 2021 budget in environmental health. It's a pretty basic calculation. The expenses that finance has provided us, $1,082,500. That includes bringing our staffing up to 6 sanitarians and 1.9 FTEs of clerks. We do on a yearly basis get revenue from the state in the well and septic programs, as well as the food programs, as well as the water supply programs. That's a pretty consistent basis year to year. And it is budgeted at $385,000. So we subtract that from our expenses, leaves $697,000. And then we are expecting additional fee revenue, normal average at revenue of about $395,000. That's traditionally what we've received over the last few years. That gets us down to about $302,000 of additional local fee revenue needed to balance the 2021 budget. And I put in $189,000 of expected fee revenue from last year's fee increases. Now, these were in the food program, the campground program, the pool campground, the type 2 program, DHHS, child care inspection programs. Those were last year's fee increases. We are not realizing 100% of them this year, mostly due to COVID, mostly, and the, situation that we have currently. So when you do the calculations, we are basically looking at about $113,000 plus or minus of fee revenues needed to balance the budget. So for 2021, we are proposing that we collect those $113,000 from the well and septic programs, which did not incur any fee increases. In fact, there have not been any fee increases since 2008 until last year for the food and campground and pool programs. And then this year, or coming up in next year, for the well and septic program. So with that being said, what we wanted to do as far as figuring out how to increase the fees, I'm using average permitting levels over the past few years, and that's on page 3. Essentially about 250 well permits per year, about 225 septic permits per year. You move down, I've got a nice table there on page 3. Kind of shows you what our current fees are, what the potential fee increase is, the calculations with the additional expected revenue if everything plays out correctly. And that gets us to about $115,000, gives us an extra couple $1,000s of play. And that is what we're proposing in environmental health fees. So with that, I'll take any questions that y'all might have, and we'll go from there.
Mr. Chair, I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
Don, I think you may have asked this question or answered this question already. And if you did, I apologize. But when is the last time that the septic and wells arenas have seen an increase in rate?
2008.
2008. Okay. I think that's the only question I had, sir.
And that was the same as for the food and other fees from last year's increases. There had been no increases. The state increases theirs according to the Consumer Price Index, and we're talking a couple dollars here, a dollar there, what have you, on a year-to-year basis. We had not done any of that until 2019.
Okay. Thank you. That was the only question I had, Mr. Chair.
All right, commissioners and committee, is there any other questions? Okay, if not, the recommendation is, I believe this is to move to the full board.
So move.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed the same. All right, we will move it to the full board. Next item on the agenda is the Health Department monthly report.
Hey, good afternoon all. Hope you all had a great holiday weekend. Trying to get myself on the video, but I don't think I'm able to. So you might have to just hear my voice for now. Sorry about that. So one of the things, just going through my report. Oh, there we go. Start my video. All right. Good afternoon, all. So one of the things, just to start off with my report, going through a few items, we've been pretty busy, even besides COVID. One of the programs is our medical marijuana, which is a grant-funded program. To date, so the point of this program is to provide some education to parents and families about safety of medical marijuana and storing that away safely. So we provide these what are known as lock bags that have these like codes on them that people can put in to lock away their supply. So we've given about 120 of those bags out. We've done some focus groups, Course Safely, with about 40 participants to solicit feedback on what we can do better in our education. Under the teen pregnancy program, no numbers really to report there, except to say that we're moving to all virtual. So we are continuing that program, holding our teen advisory council meetings, as well as our adult advisory council meetings to take place even throughout the time of this pandemic. On the WIC program, you'll see our numbers listed there. And as I mentioned to you earlier this month, WIC staff has been working tremendously hard. We get toward the end there on that on the bottom of that page, you'll see that we get about money from the state to support 4,277 clients. But as you can see in the numbers above that, each month, our staff has exceeded those numbers. So we've really served over 100% of our caseload for clients to have received information on the program or received food benefits. So we're really, staff's working super hard there, even during this pandemic, to do things either remotely or have people come to the health department and we meet them out in our parking lot. So we've been working tremendously hard there. And we're super grateful that we can continue the WIC program because we feel that our staff do a wonderful job there. And then you can also see, just to give you a to-date number, since the pandemic, we've enrolled, this is how many families, so it's not going to be individuals versus the numbers I just gave to you above in the 4,000s is for individuals. So again, great to see that level of service being offered there under WIC. Couple of our other programs under a division of personal and preventative health. These are ones that we provide services to our Medicaid population. For our maternal infant health program, which is our home visiting program where nurses do home visits as well as our social worker. We've served since April to August 491 clients. And for our children's special healthcare services, I apologize, I didn't spell out that acronym there. We have developed, as we call them, 183 plans of care. So those are ways that we do case management for clients and help them navigate through the health system for children with special needs. And then we've also done 14 lead telehealth visits, which we are allowed to do as per the state as of now. The other piece is in our communicable disease program. This is other diseases that we keep a track of or keep an eye on to assure that our rates stay fairly low. And we're also doing surveillance so we know what's going on in our community. Legionella is another way that this is said, is spread through water contamination. So we certainly want to keep an eye on that, particularly during these summer months. So you can see that our cases have stayed about the same since last year. But given that in a whole year of 2018, we had about 10 cases, we've already had about 7 cases this year. So hopefully as the summer months wind down and things get colder, maybe people won't be accessing water sources, things like that as much. So, hopefully those numbers stay steady. Rabies is certainly one that we keep an eye on throughout the summer months, again, because that's the potential of individuals coming in contact with animals who are potentially rabid. So again, this year, so far, we've only had 2, but, that's half of what we had in all of last year. So still continue to keep an eye on that as we close out the summer months. But also understanding that, this is kind of a throughout the year thing, as is Legionella. I'm just mentioning that, in the summer months, these are ones that we may keep a closer eye on because of the potential exposure routes. Lyme disease, you may have remembered we had issued a press release not too long ago, making people aware of how to protect themselves. And you can see our numbers there. We've had 4 cases this year so far alone. And this is, of course, is probably, as you can imagine, attributable to people being outdoors more, just taking hikes more, possibly in areas, and maybe not doing it by protecting themselves with clothing and insect repellent and things like that. So we tried to do that education message to remind folks about that. Salmonella is another one, of course, foodborne illness there mainly. We've had 15 cases this year so far. And if you can see the years in comparison to others, we have 1 linked to a nationwide recall on onions. Fortunately, it was only 1. So it could have been a consumer that purchased them and cooked with them or something like that. So not necessarily related to a restaurant, which is good, possibly, given the fact that we only had one, but obviously we want to keep those numbers low as well. In our HIV STD program, we're excited to partner with the Ottawa County Health Department, as well as 46 other county health departments to implement the Wear One campaign. So this is a way for us to encourage condom use in our community. We hope to reduce our infection rates of sexually transmitted infections, as well as unplanned pregnancies in Jackson County. So we're looking at ways to do some media outreach, social media outreach, and improving the access for our community, or for residents of our community. So just to give you an idea, I won't go through the numbers specifically, but as you all are familiar with our teen pregnancy rates, unfortunately, I only have them through 2018 from the state, and Jackson continues to remain high. This is countywide, so remember here, it could be also including city numbers of individuals within the city as well. Then you'll, yep, go ahead.
A couple quick questions. One,
Sure.
I'm curious. Curious the current HIV infection rates. If there's been any new cases, you don't have to answer now if you don't have that information available now. And then on the teen pregnancy rates, I'm just curious. It seems like it took a pretty big jump back up between 17 and 18. Like we were on a downtrend from 15, 16 to 17, and then jumped back up again. Is there something that I'm missing? Did we stop doing a program, or or was that just a promiscuous year for us?
Sure. So on the HIV rates, Commissioner Mahoney, I believe the last time I looked, it may have been less than 5, but I can double check that and then get back with you on actual numbers, so I'm not quoting that. On the teen pregnancy, as far as to my knowledge, with the history I've had with the health department in my short time here, it's not my belief that we discontinued any program. It's interesting that, it might be how much, education are we doing? How much outreach are we doing? How many kiddos are we reaching? We certainly work, as Michelle talked about in our budget meeting, that we try to work with those schools that we know where high risk kids are, right? But then we also work with kiddos proactively to try to assure positive mentoring and outreach and things like that, getting them hooked into jobs, early on, things like that. So I don't believe we've discontinued anything to my knowledge. There could have been a possibility, and again, I could look into the historic aspect of this, if we had a funding change from the state or something like that, that could have impacted it. You know what I'm saying? Because that could also relate to the change.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, we're excited about that Wear One campaign. The other piece, you could see our STD and gonorrhea rates here. I don't have yearly comparisons here, but our numbers there, we try to keep them fairly low so that people don't have additional long-term issues related to those as well. So this Wear One campaign is certainly one that can help to reduce sexually transmitted disease infection rates. Moving on to environmental health, food program is done.
Really quick question. Do you know if we were up or down in those STD numbers?
Yeah, I didn't give the previous year rates, but I can certainly do a comparison and send information to you. Sorry about that. I'm happy
That's okay.
I believe, I don't believe there was a huge jump or anything that was like outstanding, but I can double check into that and send you an email.
Okay, thank you.
On the food service side, it's good that a lot of our licenses have come in at this point. We sent out about a letter describing the options for payment, which all of you had approved for us, 145 establishments. Most of those licenses have come in. To date, only 3, or excuse me, most of those payments have come in or have been starting to come in at this point. And about 3 of them have opted to do a pay plan. So we're working through with them on that. Mosquito and tick surveillance, talk briefly about that. We, of course, are doing mosquito trapping in our community all throughout the summer. It's been pretty successful or somewhat uneventful, which is what we want to see. I don't know if we saw a whole lot of, certainly trapped some mosquitoes, but in terms of disease, we were fortunate, knock on wood, to not have seen as much so far in our community. However, continue to keep an eye. This year, it seems like Eastern equine encephalitis, we were dealing with it much earlier last summer, as Mike would recall, the many phone calls I made to him about Triple E. So this summer so far, we have, I believe, 2 horses in Montcalm County and 1 in Clare County. So we haven't, knock on wood, gotten any in our county yet. But we continue to do those trappings and make sure that we're doing surveillance to assure that those diseases are not, you know, or at least understanding if early on if they come up in our community. And then PFAS is certainly one that I know all of you are interested in. Last month during my report, I had talked about PFAS, and I think the question had come up. The state had changed the maximum containment level, meaning what is that level of what's considered safe, like in a system, right? So I'm not going to go through the entire chart here, but this is what comes down to from the state in terms of what are those maximum containment levels now that have been changed. So these are the numbers that when a system is tested, like we keep an eye on and assure that you know, things are kept either at the threshold or below the threshold and not exceeding those. So we have some non-transient, 32 non-transient water supplies that fall under this sampling requirement. So we'll be monitoring those. Mostly large businesses, schools, and childcare facilities. We've also got some type 2 water systems that we do not sample on a regular basis. However, unless they had high samples, which we don't at this time, which is good. One of the things of note is the Liberty landfill. This is one site that is being sampled right now. It's considered still fairly low risk, but we're sampling from 6 monitoring wells that we did last year. We're continuing to keep an eye on that. So fairly low at this point in terms of those standard levels, but again, continuing to keep an eye and monitor that one. And we're doing quarterly monitoring of it. If numbers come up, there's a level of frequency and a schedule that we have to maintain as per the state to keep an eye on those systems. So that brings me to finally the lovely topic we're all so excited about, continue to address our novel coronavirus. Starting last year, but certainly, you know, we're into this year with our response levels as well. Most high is, or mostly keeping track for positives. I will give you those numbers that have changed as of today. In Jackson County, we have 858 positives, including, and within that is 390 males, 468 females, and 40 deaths. Most of our deaths, I will admit, are related to the older population age group, over 50 and older. The most recent death that got added to our list of deaths was amongst a 90-year-old in the nursing home. Statewide, those numbers have also changed. As of yesterday, 107,371 positives, confirmed positives, 6,538 deaths. So that number's changed. And then as of, I believe Henry Ford's numbers are reported only as of last week. Of the third, since the 3rd, they've had 6 hospitalizations. I just checked on their website today. So I've also given you the breakdown. This is the critical work that's important that the nurses do, as well as we've got some state volunteers helping us. We've made 921 contacts. I'm sure we have a more recent number than that. I just don't have it here in front of me now. Contacts before TraceForce. So TraceForce is this volunteer group from the state that's helping us because of, you know, sustaining our staffing and things like that. They're a group of state volunteers. So before we had 448 contacts, TraceForce has since handled 379. So again, those, I'm sure there's more recent figures than that, just don't have them in front of me. But that just gives you an idea of contacts. And, you know, one case could have potentially 60 contacts. I think even amongst our first case, you know, it came out to that. So case contacts are quite a bit. One case could generate several contacts is my point there. Vulnerable populations is another one we keep track on just to make sure people are getting services and being case managed appropriately. We have about 94 individuals that were identified there. And this is something that I'm super proud of with our health department staff, nurses, clerical, management has all worked super hard the state's been tracking on a dashboard with local health departments to assure that we're doing case investigations and contact tracing, one, in a timely manner, and two, that we're actually documenting that individuals who are of a race and ethnicity are documented within a certain time frame. And this is as of our dashboard several weeks ago, but these numbers continue to be high. We've interviewed clients within 1 calendar day. We had 100% of our cases, we did that. Number of cases interviewed successfully within a day, about 89.3%. Number of cases with at least one contact, as I had mentioned earlier, are important. We've contacted at least one within a day at 100%. And then the number of cases with race and ethnicity documented in 1 week, within a week, is 96.4%. So we're super proud of the health department. If you get a chance to drop them a note or an email or let them know that, I'm sure they'll be super appreciative to hear that positive news from all of you. And then let's see, what else do I have? So we're also just continuing to keep an eye on sporting events, family gatherings, outdoor events, of course, our nursing homes, prisons, things like that. These are the ones that we're found most concerning just because a large number of contacts and or positives come from those. For example, I'll give you one of this most recently, a basketball travel league, not necessarily associated with the school, had 5 positives. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but we ended up identifying at least 45 people were quarantined within several hours. It did occur among 6 schools, but again, not associated with any one school. I think there was about 2 schools that were identified outside of our county. So as you can see, just from this one event or one occurrence here, if you will, it's not even just an occurrence, it was several games that took over a time as well as practices. It created a lot of time for work, data gathering, identifying contacts, following up on test results, etc. So just to give you a flavor for what it is that our staff deal with, and why we need the state's help with some of this, because we have 6 nurses to help us with a lot of this work, as well as additional clerical staff. So I think that's pretty much it for my report. Just continuing to remind folks about the same things and staying on track with washing hands, social distancing, wearing masks, avoiding these gatherings if possible, that kind of thing. The other piece that I didn't mention here is we do keep an eye on the school numbers and what's going on with their school age kiddos. At last check, about 8% of our total positives included those below the age of 18. So not super high there, but we want to keep track on that number as well, with schools opening up, more schools opening up even today. So any questions I can answer for the board or others?
Mr. Chair, I do have just one
Tony
question.
and then Darius.
Okay.
Hello, Rashmi. At the top of your report, first paragraph, 120 marijuana lock bags were distributed.
Yeah.
These individuals purchase these?
Nope, they're given free of charge, Commissioner Bear, through the grant. So essentially, if you have a registered medical marijuana license card issued by the state, then we can give you these lock bags to store your supply. And they're given to us we get state money to run this grant, and they're given to us by that. We don't have people pay for them.
Okay, so it's a grant, so the other taxpayers in the county are not paying for them either.
We get it through, I'd have to look through the budget specifically to see how much we have to if we have to buy them ourselves or if the state just gives them to us. But being that we agree to participate in this grant, I believe we would get them from the state or from the supplier.
Thank you.
Darius?
Thank you. My question was related to the Women, Infant, and Children program. How much of an uptick has that program seen since the pandemic?
Sure, that's a great question, Commissioner Williams. I think, really it stayed. Sure, I think even last month, let me just look at my report I have in front of me from last month. Just to give you an idea, we had about maternal infant health, about 116 telehealth visits. And then for children's special health care, we had developed 59 plans of care. So it's gone up slightly, but truly this is a program that, it's much like the WIC program. We find a lot of folks are in need. need to continue getting our services, and we try to provide that as much as possible, even if it's in a remote setting.
Okay, thank you. And then I also will mention too, I'm glad to see that the teen pregnancy prevention program is still continuing, even using virtual settings to continue to do their work. So I was really glad to see that.
Thank you.
That's all I got, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee or commissioners? Any additional questions? All right, I think that will take care of it. Rashmi, thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Same to you.
And that will bring us down to the claims. Need a motion and support to pay the bills. Mr. Kennedy and supported by Mr. Pileski. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say the same. Next is other minutes. If you have a chance to get to review the DHHS board meeting minutes. October reporting schedule. Department on Aging, Health Department, and Lifeways will be at next month's meeting. And then that brings us down to public comment. Any public comment tonight? Today?
No public comment.
All right. Brings us to committee member comments. Any committee member comments? All right. Seeing or hearing none at that. We'll bring
Daniel?
Oh, yeah.
Daniel, if I may. I just wanted to make people aware of those DHSS minutes, I believe are the financials for the medical care on a monthly basis. Am I correct, Deborah? You can just nod on that. Don't we include those in that? Or am I getting those separately?
They usually do include the DHHS minutes and the medical care facility minutes, I believe, because they are separate meetings. So they do.
I know that
forward
there
those
was
to us.
questions earlier raised about financial questions about medical care. And we get those right now through those minutes. So just to make all the commissioners aware that they can review those financials at any time. We get them on a very timely basis from medical care.
So just for clarification, are you saying that that's usually where those will be housed at under those other minutes? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes, sir.
No.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
So just to make life a little easier on searching for stuff or not having to repetitively ask our staff for stuff that that's been made available to us. Thank you, Daniel.
No problem at all. Anything else? All right. At this time, we will adjourn to the call of the chair. Have a good day, everybody.
Just a reminder, we're going to go back to finish up the general government meeting. Okay. See you there.